to the RunnerX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running.
Welcome back to the RunnerX podcast. And today I want to talk about something that I used to talk about many years ago when I started kind of talking about running and enjoying running. And it was something that Valerie and I talk a lot about. And I might piss some people off. So if you're triggered, take a deep breath, listen to what we're saying. We're not criticizing you. You are a wonderful person. Okay? And I mean that, I don't mean that condescendingly. I mean that because we get triggered by things because somebody says something and we think that's an attack on who we are. And that's really what this is about. I want to talk about the quote unquote, air quote, slow runner. I'm a 13-minute miler. I'm a 17-minute miler. And where I'm going to piss you off is I'm going to say, if you run a mile more than 13 minutes, stop. Stop running. Because you're not running. Right, Valerie? So, Valerie, let's talk about that. If in the last episode we talked about perception, we've talked about running is free falling, running is when both feet are in the air. If I'm running a 13, 14, even 17-minute mile, I'm on the ground, aren't I?
Right. You're probably not running. And here's the thing, too. So
you're hopping, right? You're almost walking with a jump. I hate to say it. You're not.
Yeah, that could be
because what you're trying to do is you're trying to walk, but you're trying to get your heart rate up, so you're literally hopping or jumping as you're running, pushing. And I get it. I'm there. I've been there. So I want to stop you from doing that because that's what's injuring you.
And what's funny is, by the way, just so we can go back in time a little bit, when I met Caroline, I said that to her, and she got a little triggered.
Yeah,
remember?
I was totally triggered.
Yeah, so when I first met her, she said to me, I think she said things like, I'm a slow runner.
Yep.
I
run about a 13-minute mile.
I run about a 13-minute mile.
I can't go faster than a 10, I think I said.
Yeah, so there was all of this coming at me. And by the way, I don't even listen. Like when people come at me with that, I smile and I do nod. And I always think in my head, they've just never run before.
Well, that's a good coach. A coach doesn't believe the story you tell yourself, guys, because that's really what it is. And Valerie and I talk about that all the time. People come to us and say, I have bad hips, or I'm a slow runner, or I can't run, or I can't do sprints, or whatever it is. I can't.
Yeah.
We put ourselves in these boxes and we label ourselves to give ourselves like a sense of identity. And that's okay. I mean, it's very comforting. It's very comforting. But it's a story.
Yeah.
And so I got to give her huge props because that's what makes her a good coach. And she didn't believe my story. She proved to me that it was a story. It was not true. So expand on that.
And I want to say this as well because there's a culture all around that.
Yeah.
And to be fair, we celebrate anybody that wants to go out and do the work and everything. But I feel like if I was that person and I had said to myself, man, I want to run, I don't know, a half marathon or a full marathon or whatever it is, I want to run it.
Yeah.
I want to run it. I don't want to race it. I don't have to win it, but I want to feel like I'm running. And so then it goes back to, of course, perception. Because unfortunately, they didn't really understand what it feels like to run. So they got put into the mindset, and I've seen all the training plans, just go out for 5 minutes. Just go out for 10 minutes. You can do it, right? So then what happens is, what are you going out and doing?
You're pounding, you're pushing.
Well, you don't know. Who knows? We don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what you're doing. You're just out there. Even the walking. I don't know how you're walking, right? How are you walking? Are you walking by intent? Are you holding your shoulders over your hips? Are you leading
butt
from
sticking
your
out?
hip? I mean,
Is it?
right. So, I mean, if the first thing you would do is think, let me work on my movement, whether it's walking or running, we obviously advocate running, walking too, though, then things start to shift. There's more of a success. There's more ways to meet success.
Right.
If I can help you feel first what is running, and then we can work on things like, Caroline says this, and I say it all the time as a movement coach. Whether I'm teaching you squatting or running, first I'm going to make sure you know how to do the squat or the run.
Right.
And do correctly. Does it make sense for me to say, hey man, go for 10 minutes. You can't even run 3 steps. And here's a really funny, when I met my coach, Dr. Romanov, and he, by the way, he'll say, no, I wasn't quite that bad. Yes, he was. In a good way, though, because he cared about me enough to change me. I was an 8:30 racer. Like when I would race, 8:30, maybe 8:15. And it was very funny because I was really proud of it. I'm still proud of it. So when he met me and he said, why 8:30? I said, I don't know, it works for me. Like that's where I feel like I'm working as hard as I can. I mean, and back then, remember I just started. I was still pushing and reaching. I didn't realize it. So he said, well, honestly, Valerie, you're just spending about 4 extra frames on the ground.
Right.
And all those extra frames are just putting impact on your knees and your hamstring. I mean, your body, right? And it's not about me wanting you to run faster. I'm just telling you, you're limiting yourself just because there's an error in your movement. He corrected my fall. I really wasn't falling. And I started racing at 6:30s. I was already 33, 34 years old at this point. So it wasn't like my VO2 max went up.
Right.
It wasn't like all of a sudden at 34, I've got this magic new muscles.
Right. And it wasn't like she lost 20 pounds. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
it wasn't like she, and that's the next thing I want to talk about.
Right. And I know I go on, but my point was I already thought I wasn't telling people I'm slow. I was like, I'm pretty cool. I run an 8:30.
Yeah.
And then I had someone challenge me to say, well, why don't you run 6:30? It wasn't even in my mind. I didn't think Valerie could run a 6:30. That was for elites.
Right.
I was just the coach. And then once I realized I had limited my own self. You see what I mean?
And that's kind of what I wanted to go with is that when I talk about a 17-minute miler or a 13-minute miler, I'm not talking about weight, guys, because we all know that we've talked about that, about my weight. And I'll tell you, when I was before I met Valerie, when I was doing my marathons, I remember I asked a gentleman that I wanted to run a 4-hour marathon, right? That was a goal at the time. It's not anymore, but it was at the time. And he very matter-of-factly, man, this triggered me bad, very matter-of-factly looked at me and said, you have to lose 20 pounds then. And I remember so distinctly, there was another friend of mine in between us, gentleman that saw him say that, flipped his head over and looked at me and said that if he hadn't been there, he could see that I would have just grabbed him by his ears and ripped his head off his neck, right? I was pissed because to me, I was very fit at the time, right? I was working out, I was running, and I actually started challenging him. How dare you tell me that losing weight is the only way for me to get faster? And then I met Valerie, and I'll be honest, when I met her, that's what I thought. The only way I was going to ever get faster is by losing weight. But what she's trying to tell us, and what I want to try to make clear to you guys, is she got 2 minutes faster by the same weight, right? She was already fit. She was already, at where she was going to be muscle-wise, that sort of wise.
Right.
It was her fall. And so that's what I want to try to tell you, is this has nothing to do with your size. Yes, it's going to, we had a whole nother conversation about putting that much pressure on your joints. Okay, This is not about that. This is about you can get into that 13, 12, 11 minute where you're doing less damage to your joint, and possibly even a 10 or a 9-minute miler without losing a pound, right? And how is that? Why we do that through falling, right? And what do you want me to do between that 17 and that 10 and a half?
Well, I mean, that's where probably your body will change.
Yeah.
I mean, to be real, like you guys know this. I mean, most people, this is the challenge, right? A lot of people want to lose weight by running. Then they go out and they hurt themselves.
Yeah.
Or they try to go too far, they try to go too fast. We are going to teach you how to work with your own body weight. So then what happens is, as you get more efficient in your movement, I believe, we all, as runners, we all know, it feels a lot better to run when you weigh a lot less.
Yeah.
It just does. So when you decide you want to lose weight, that's a whole nother journey. Like, I just feel like your weight loss journey is just like your running journey.
Right.
You start wherever you are and you take it where you go to. But the weight for running, when we talk about weight, it's body weight. Whatever you weigh right now, that's your body is already supporting that. So we would always encourage, be a healthy weight, please. But in general, it's not what's limiting your ability.
That's not what's
run.
keeping you on the ground.
Right.
And that's the perception and the mind shift I want you to make with this. That's why we did this podcast, is if you've been listening to us for a while, and you've been hearing my journey and my story, you know that I'm running again or trying to run again. And I am also trying to lose weight, but that's not why I'm spending too much time on the ground. It has nothing to do with my weight. It has to do with my movement and my ability to fall and my ability to hold pose or hold my ears, shoulders, hips in line while I run. Right. While I drill. And right now, guys, I am just drilling because we just did a quick we did 6 minutes. Right. It should have been 10, but we did a 6-minute little video for our group just to show them how to train. And I might take a piece of it and put it with this podcast just so you guys can see it. But what was really interesting is your head, like we talked about, it's 30 pounds. It got ahead of my body, which put my shoulders. It was probably maybe, I don't even think you could measure it, right? But I felt it, and as soon as you said in the video, you watch your shoulders, right? I readjusted, and I didn't readjust to the point where I was now leaning back, right? Mm-hmm. I wasn't straight up and down. I was still in the fall. I just made sure that my shoulders, ears, and hips were all in line. My shoulders weren't coming in front of my ear.
So most people, by the way, this is the challenge too, and this is a good conversation. So when we do these drills, right, you can correct yourself inside of a drill. Well, obviously if somebody's with you too, it goes both ways. But if you're with yourself and you do these quality drills, like we got 1,000 steps out of 6 minutes. Yeah. And every step was a good step. And that's what you got to start thinking about, is the quality over the quantity. Quantity's there forever. Miles of running are there for you to have. First get there, right? And that's important, but it also goes back to awareness. So Caroline's starting to sense when she gets her head too far forward, or maybe she brings it too far back. And in order for us to play with that sensation, it's just tuning back into yourself. And guys, we cannot stress enough that you can practice holding your pose while you're walking. Yeah. So we're not telling you not to move your body or not to exercise. We're asking you to please not try to run further than you can fall pull. And I'll do one quick side story. When I first met Romanov, and I was already running marathons, so it goes back to fitness. Yeah. And he said, "You're not falling. I only want you to run 3 steps."
I know, I love that. I love that story.
And I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean run 3 steps?" And he's like, "I want you to do 3 pulls, 1, 2, 3, and then fall. 1, 2, 3, fall. Start to put falling into your thoughts."
Now, before you guys email us, look in the 30-day reboot. Oh, yeah, I believe it's in the first week. She shows you the triple pull. That's all she's doing.
Well, it's basically to realize, like he was saying to me, you have to understand all 3 elements: pose, fall, pull, before you can go out and run. You're not running. Yeah. You're not falling. He was like, then you're just pulling your feet, or you're moving your body. You're not running. So that was his point. And I'm telling you, that was a March when he said that. Just so you know, ran a marathon in May without running any kind of distance training. Now I had a good background, but to take myself out of that thought process of all these miles and literally just go out and feel. And if these 3 steps feel good, take 3 more. Then take 3 more.
Guys,
and that's what it becomes.
It's my favorite way to even, like, when we do warm-ups, when we were doing warm-ups, when we'd work out at 5:30 in the morning, which was absolutely the only reason I would ever get up at 5:30 in the morning is for this woman right here, is I would get up and she'd say, go run around the parking lot or whatever. I would do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If for nothing else, but it was just it was fun. It was light. It kept my mind, like you said, on one task, on one thing. So if I'm a 17-minute runner, if I'm a 15-minute runner, you would have me do the 30-day reboot and just stay within that 1, 2, 3. Stay within that mindset, right? Of I'm just going to learn to hold the correct, to hold pose, right?
And instead of thinking I've got to run a mile, just run like we did this today. We literally picked a spot in a parking lot. I think it was 3 parking spaces. Yeah. And that was the length of our run. So we would do a drill, run those 3 parking places, and again we just arbitrarily picked it, and it was about 14 steps. It wasn't very thought out. It was just, this is quick and good. And we did that back and forth, rest when you need to. So that instead of thinking I must continue moving forward, be okay with thinking about movement. And then if you want to warm up for a 20-minute walk or go for a walk after that, go for it. But I'm telling you, if you take some time to just practice and think on the running, then what's going to happen is the next time you go running, or as you continue your running, each of those intervals start to get longer, because that's the fun thing. Like, say you're like, ooh, I'm feeling my fall, and I fall to the, fire hydrant. And then you think to yourself, ooh, I'm going to see if I can fall to the next stop sign. And all of a sudden, you're running. I'm telling you, you're going to have a new awakening.
Well, and the reason why that's a perfect way, because that's how I actually started running when I first started running. And it's actually what I was trying to do a little bit before I started working out with you again, is I was in an apartment in Phoenix, and I would get up in the morning and I would start at this light post, and my goal was to get to the end of the street, which I actually had measured by my little watch, was a quarter mile. And so my goal was to get to the quarter mile.
Right.
And when I first started, I couldn't, right? I had to walk, and then I'd go, and I'd get, and again, it wasn't by that timing. It wasn't run 2 minutes, walk a minute. It was run as far as I could, walk a little bit, run a little bit, get to there, and then run back. And I did that for like a week. And then I went, okay, now I'm going to go past that. I'm going to cross the street.
Right.
And there was another apartment building. So that wasn't maybe another 1/10 of a mile. And I did that for a week and back. And you guys all know, this is how we started. We probably forgot, because it was so many years ago, that's seriously, if you've not run before, that's how you're starting. Well, get back to that coachable mindset right now. I don't care that you've done a half marathon.
Right.
I don't care that you do 5Ks every weekend at a 17-minute pace. What I'm trying to say is you're hurting your body for the long term. Let's get you into that 10, 11-minute mile pace. And it's not because we want you to be some speed demon. It's not because we want you to change who you are. You can be a middle of the pack runner. I don't care.
Right.
We want you to not hurt your body.
Right.
And
if
also
you're doing that,
you're spending too much. Go ahead, say that again.
Well, I was going to say also, it's like anything else. You're like your story you said, or you're limiting yourself.
You're limiting yourself.
And if you're the guy that's always like, I stay in the back for the runners. I mean, everybody loves that person, but at some point, just make sure you're running for you.
Yeah, make sure you're running for you. You can stay in the back, but please don't injure yourself.
Right.
Putting yourself, I'm going to be a 17-minute miler because that makes, come on, think about that. Why did you start running to begin with? You started running for whatever reason. Your mental health, your physical health, to be with your friends, whatever that is, and realize you're spending way too much time on the ground. Now, if you go, well, Caroline, I can't run a 13-minute mile. I can only run a 17.
Today.
Then walk.
Right.
Then walk. Please, there's a walking video. You can walk up. My husband can speed walk an 11-minute mile. Guys, that used to crack me up, because he'd come back and go, oh, I hated that. But I got to an 11-minute mile. I'm like, dude, you realize that's as fast as I run, right? And some days I was running a 12-minute mile. Now, but again, and I'm going to just hammer this home, and we'll end the podcast here, that if you're doing a 10 and an 11, if you start to eke up to a 12, and it's not because it's 96% humidity and 110 degrees, okay? We're talking it's a nice, beautiful 60-degree day, and you clock a 13-minute mile without stopping, you're spending too much time on the ground.
Right.
It's just physics.
Right.
Guys, it's physics. It's nothing personal. It's nothing about your shape, your size, your club foot, your
tight hips.
VO2, your tight hips. It's just physics. And I plead with you, please, work through the drills and spend less time on the ground. And that's where I'm going to end it.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRx podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.